everyone, this is Alexandria Corbett, and we did ADHD as our project. I will give you guys a little bit of a disclaimer. My Microsoft Office expired today in the middle of my project, so I'm hoping I can post my link for this inside the PowerPoint. If not, I will attach it to the link that I upload in the comments so that hopefully you guys can see it. So the article that I picked is a guide for parents, teachers, and professionals. It was written by Hazen and Goldstein. It comes out of the book Mental Health Disorders in Adolescence, and the title is a guide for parents, teachers, and professionals out of Rutgers University. So it's 15 pages and just gives a really broad overview of what ADHD is and a little bit about everything that goes into that disorder. So the article summary, it starts out by saying, what is ADHD? So ADHD is a condition or diagnosis in the DSM-5. It's reported that 5 to 8% of children and adolescents have been diagnosed with ADHD, and this is the most common mental disorder diagnosed in childhood. It is believed that genetics play an important role in ADHD, and ADHD is not preventable, which is a common miscommunication that some people do think ADHD is preventable, but it is not. ADHD does lead to academic issues in the adolescence years, and they usually come out more during junior high and high school. It's harder when kids are in elementary school only because they're younger, and younger kids are already associated with being hyper or unable to focus. But ADHD is really noticeable when kids get to middle school and high school. When you get to that age, you're expected as a student to be able to organize yourself with less supervision and complete your work. And students with ADHD really struggle with that because they struggle to focus and they struggle to set goals. They also touch on the fact this isn't real. So like I mentioned earlier, people think that ADHD isn't a real diagnosis only because children are already known to be hyper, they're already known to be active, unable to focus. If you ever talk to a 5-year-old, you'll know what I mean. But what it touches on is that ADHD is real, and it is altering the brain. So if you do scans or you do tests, you can see the differences in kids with ADHD and kids without ADHD. So the next thing it touches on is symptoms and warning signs. Something that I didn't know that was brought up in this article is that ADHD is more common in boys. I don't know why that surprised me, but for some reason, it did kind of catch me off guard a little bit. So symptoms of ADHD begin early in childhood, but like I said, normally go unrecognized until teenage years. So some of the symptoms that were mentioned is difficulty maintaining attention, being easily distracted, careless mistakes, appearance of not listening, difficulty following directions, frequently failing school assignments, difficult with organization, complaints of being bored, avoidance of tasks, forgetfulness, and tendency to lose things. So those are just a couple of the symptoms that it suggested. Making a diagnosis, so it talks about what a child would have to have or who would have to make that diagnosis to be able to diagnose with ADHD. So what the article explains is that a child or adolescent psychiatrist, mental health professional, or physician would have to make the diagnosis of ADHD. And it talks about a little bit about what would go into making that diagnosis. So not only looking at a child's performance in school, but also in the home. And this is a good practice when diagnosing children with ADHD is to speak to not only their teachers, but their coaches, parents, and other important people in their life to kind of get a whole view of how the child acts in all of those different environments. Clinicians also use checklists or standardized scales such as the Conners rating scale to determine if a child has ADHD. Some other problems to consider when making a diagnosis. With ADHD, it's hard because the symptoms of ADHD often mimic the stage where the child is at, so normal behavior. So if you have a 5-year-old, the 5-year-old's already going to struggle to focus, but what puts it over the edge? And just making sure that you get that diagnosis right. So some of the problems to consider, some just ways to make sure that you're getting it right, is ADHD often mimics some other disorders, such as mood disorders, depression, bipolar, because mood disorders can also cause problems with attention. So it's really important to pay close attention to make sure that you're diagnosing them with an actual diagnosis of ADHD, and maybe it isn't, it might be something else. Learning disorders can also mimic ADHD. So students or kids with learning disorders also become restless and bored in class, which is also a symptom of ADHD. So something to kind of be mindful of there. But one thing the article distinguishes is students with learning disorders typically only struggle in one class. So if you have a learning disorder in math, you usually do okay in English and social studies. With students and kids with ADHD, they seem to struggle with all of it. So it won't be one specific class that they struggle with, it'll kind of be all of it. Um, Students, specifically teens, a lot of teens who have ADHD could possibly have ODD, which is oppositional defiant disorder or a conduct disorder. So those are disorders where kids have behavioral issues. So kids with ADHD and kids with ODD both have that component of behavioral issues, and it's important to pay close attention to that to make sure that you're diagnosing them correctly. Another aspect is treatment. I know medication for ADHD children is very controversial, and it kind of goes through that in the article a little bit and talks about the perks of both. But what it states is really important to remember is that a combination of medication, educational accommodations, and therapy are really key to make sure that this child can function properly. It's not one is better than the other, it's a combination of all of them. And no single treatment plan is going to be right for every child because every child is different, and every child with ADHD is going to need something a little bit different. One suggestion that it has is a collaboration between the school and mental health providers and the parents. So making sure that the schools are having these meetings where everybody can sit down at the table together and talk about what that student needs in order to make sure that the school can provide it. With medications, stimulants are usually the first line of medications, so that is Ritalin and Adderall are some of the two popular ones. And it's important to keep the child involved with medication. So if the child doesn't want to take medications, they're not going to take medications. So it's important to keep them involved. These medications do have some side effects such as headaches, stomach aches, decreased appetite, and difficulty sleeping. So it's important to stay in contact with your doctor to make sure that the medication and the dosage is correct. And there's also other medications that they can take, such as antidepressants, but the first stop is always stimulants. And therapy is also very important. So therapy that's very structured and provides detailed information on how to change behaviors. The article mentions that unstructured, open-ended approaches to therapy are not helpful because that can be very frustrating to a kid with ADHD who already struggles to focus, so they need a very organized form of therapy. Other methods of treatment would be tutor or ADHD coaches and also educational advocates to help the parents kind of navigate the school system and make sure that their child is getting what they need. And the last thing that the article covers is education modification. So this is meeting with the schools to make sure that this child with ADHD gets what they need to learn to the best of their ability. So this might be an IEP, which is an individualized education plan that just kind of gives the child a little bit more attention in their problem areas. And it's also important that the student, if the school has these resources, is meeting with a school psychologist or counselor to be able to kind of pick up on these modifications. And like I said earlier, school meetings are really important so that everyone can kind of sit to the table and talk about what the student needs, because not every student is going to need the same thing. Some of the modifications it does talk about is maybe sitting the student in a different location in the classroom where there's less distractions, helping them use more organizational tools like colored folders, breaking down large projects into smaller tasks which is helping them give them more structured deadlines. Providing multiple textbooks, one for at home, one at school, so they don't have to worry about losing things or forgetting things, and just allowing a little extra time on tests and assignments really can help a student with ADHD out. So some of the web resources that I pulled, the first one is the National Institute of Mental Health. So that one has very scientific diagnoses. It goes through how it affects the brain. It's very detailed information, but sometimes can be a little bit hard to read, but I would highly recommend the first one, just because it really does have a lot of good information. The second one is the Attention Deficit Disorder Association. That one provides a lot of facts, so a lot of statistics and a lot of numbers if you want to see how ADHD affects teens and children all over the country. That's a really good website to kind of get little snippets of facts that they're really easy to remember. So when you're working with a student or you're working with a family, it's really easy to pull these facts up because they're very user-friendly to read. But the last website was my personal favorite. It's called Kids Health. So what's cool about this website is you can go and look at ADHD information from the view of a parent, from the view of a child, and then from the view of a teacher and other professionals. So it's really cool because parents need different information than the kids do, who need different information than their teachers. So it's really cool how it breaks it down and kind of pitches the information in a way that that audience can understand it. So these were three really good resources to learn about ADHD. Each are more important and more useful in their own ways. And what I did here is we put all the references together. So this is all the references from the entire project, but the last four are the ones that I've talked about today. So I hope you guys learned a little bit about ADHD and that you can use the resources that I provided to learn a little bit more. Thank you.